Welcome to Brightly, You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we share soul driven advice and topics to help you live more brightly in mind, body, and spirit. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and passions, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Amy.
So I have been so curious. Last episode, you actually brought up an intuitive reading,
Ooh.
which I've had someone do like a palm reading. I've had like other kinds of reading. I've never had an intuitive reading. And so I'm just like so curious and fascinated by it. And what you brought up felt very impactful for that episode. Very impactful. Just, you know, moving forward is a new skill. But I'm just wondering, like, is there anything else that you wanted to share with that?
So thank you. I'm glad that it resonated. Like I wasn't when I did the reading, I didn't think it was gonna wrap into either of our shows, to be honest. Like it was just
Yeah.
something that I'd been feeling called to do for a little while, and just all of a sudden I took the step and I did it. And I'm glad to hear that you're interested in having one because I ended my call with her with my I'm going to be recommending her you to my co-creator, and if she doesn't sign up, it'll be her birthday gift because I think you would get along so well with her. But also,
Yeah.
she's just amazing at what she does. But what I really wanted to talk about today, at least for the show, is her. that
Oh,
it
yeah.
a huge part of why it was so impactful. Like she keeps saying she was just the messenger from her guides and my guides and things like that, and kept apologizing. I don't know if this makes sense, and blah blah this, blah blah that, and like, oh, is it okay that I said this? And I was like, you just keep talking. Like, stop asking questions. This is resonating, right? But this individual is somebody who, even if she wasn't talking to me about myself or my future self, I would just like to sit in her presence. And I think it would have had the same effect that she
Wow.
energetically, just
Mhm.
talking to her, I've had her in my home before. I've received healings from her. She just carries this essence around her that instantly lights you up and motivates you, and it doesn't leave when she leaves, right? Like some people have that, but when they're gone, they take it with them, right? Like, I think of like Marilyn Monroe, how she could turn it on and off, and it kind of made everybody obsessed with her because they needed to be around her to feel it. That's not what this person has. This person finds a way to use her light to illuminate your light, right? Like it's like a passing of the torch energetically, I feel
This
like.
is so everything you're saying is so beautiful. First of all, it gives me a clear picture of her, but it also the words that you're using are just so poetic about passing the torch and illuminating your light and just like
Right? It's kind of
anyways,
like
yeah.
and so what it doesn't last because you then have to like warm your own hearth, right? You have to take care of the
Yeah.
light on your own. And thankfully the messages that she gives you that spark to be able to do that, right? Because some of the things she was saying wasn't all nice. Like some of it was work, and some of it was stuff I was avoiding, and some of it was, past Tracy stuff and things
Yeah,
like
and
that.
you kind of shared that in the last episode.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so she's still it's delivered with such grace and with such warmth and kindness, and just herness, that you're so easily able to receive it, right? Like you're just in this cocoon of like,
Oh.
yes, tell me more, right? Like, and so
Defenses get put up because you don't want to hear it. You're just open to receiving it.
yes, because a lot of times when you receive even whether it's a criticism or constructive feedback, both of those terms and that intent is to make you different. to form and shape you into something that the person giving that information to you wants you to be. I think that's why it's hard to hear. It's because some of it we know and we just haven't been able to do yet, and other stuff we didn't know, and now it's going to be really hard to fix because her delivery is not about that. It's just about sharing information, which is, it's just such a different space. And so what I wanted to talk about today, we did an episode like 10 back, maybe more, called Dimly, because so much of this show with the show called Brightly is about, you know, like being and doing and like trying to be things for others and for yourself. And so Dimly was really like how to still take care of yourself and still move forward even when you're not feeling bright and shiny. And so I kind of wanted to do an episode on the bright and shiny people around you. Like have you ever had an interaction with someone that totally changed you? So like her, I went to her because I knew it would change me. But like there's other people in my life, like even just my chiropractor today put me in an even better mood just by being himself, right? Like, and it wasn't smarmy and salesperson-y. Like he just walks into a room and he carries a vibe. Like I think I shared with you, there's this book I hated because it was all vibe, no plots, and I hated the vibe. He is the total opposite. He is all vibe, no plot, but I love that vibe. Like I drive to St. Paul to see a chiropractor for my mood more than my neck. Like, and I see him for like what, 6 minutes? Chiropractic appointments are not very long.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I want to talk about bright and shiny people, or a bright and shiny person. Shiny, like I said with this person, is, you know, reflecting light, right? Like that's the definition of shiny. And oh, and I didn't mean to like, oh, and I'm not like hiding her. So she's I know her by Aketra. That's her name as far as I know. But on her socials and what she's doing professionally now in the intuitive world is she goes by Empowered by Lem Tutu. We follow her on Instagram. And so if you are interested, I'm sure I'll repost something by her and you can find her as one of the people we follow. But, you know, does anyone come to mind to you like that, where just being around them just makes your day better?
You know, the minute you said that, actually, because I feel like there's many people, I'm gifted with many people in my life that make me feel better just being around. I mean, you're one. I have
you're on my list.
Oh. And actually, my husband is one. My friend Peggy is one.
That makes me feel good.
My children, all of my children are one, although sometimes they can make me feel the other way as well. But when you were talking about that, of course, the first person who popped into my head was my mom. Now, that's fine because I can still sort of get that. But somebody who does this, who maybe it is a niece through marriage. So it's my nephew's wife who does my hair. And of course we do things other than that. I mean, we do family things, but every time I go to her for my hair, it feels like a therapy session, but a really good, uplifting therapy session, because not only is she like, her words are just like life affirming and stuff like that. She's also massaging my head, and you know what I mean? So she's doing these things to me that feel really good and end up making me look good, and she's making me feel good. So
but there's something about what she's doing, whether intentional or it's just part of her being, where I've been to hairdressers who have said the right things or the right words, but the vibration wasn't there. Meaning and the feel goodness wasn't there. And they've also, you know, massaged my hair, but it also felt more like, oh, this is a job for them today and not like the spa relaxing moment I need, right? Like, and so like all the same things were happening, but I haven't been back to that salon because I didn't feel like they wanted me there, right? Whereas your person, you're like, I feel like I hung out with a friend.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Not only a friend, but a friend who, like, every single thing, there was like love behind it. And so sometimes you can hang out with friends and you're like, I love this friend, but like they kind of, I don't know, brought me down today or whatever. Like, so
So
I don't, and I'm also being very reticent right now because I'm like, there's so many people who do
yeah,
this
so
for
we
me
only
all
have
the
30 to
time.
40 minutes, right?
Exactly.
So same,
So,
if I
and
haven't
I'd like
listed
to
you.
thank my sister Patty and, you know,
Well, that's one of those things though. Like you said, you've kind of stacked your deck. And so you say, "Oh, I have all these people around me," but like that means they also have you and you've cultivated that, right? Like attracts like, or you've
okay.
created it. Because I think once you've had those moments, it's really easy to shed what doesn't fit or those people, right? That
Yeah.
maybe you love, but you take in small doses. Whereas the other people you like make space for and you reach
Yes.
out equally or get
Mhm.
excited when you're reached out to, you move your
Mhm.
schedule around for them, or you get excited when it's going to happen. Because I love
Mhm.
that you said that thing about love, because I was going to ask, how do you recognize these shining beings in your life, right? Because
Yeah.
mine, it's somewhat transactional. Like this person, I hadn't reached out to her for a while because of the pandemic and other things. And so I went very formal because we hadn't talked in a while. And
Mhm.
I reached out on her website to schedule. And then it let me schedule with less than 24 hours notice. So I just sent her a message on Instagram in case she sees that more than her, because she has a day job too. And I know she's active on, I can see when she's active on Instagram. And when we were talking, she's like, "You still have my number, right? Like you can text me." Like,
Oh,
and
that's
like,
wonderful.
we went
Yes.
way over my hour, but like we were just chit chatting at the end and just like it didn't feel like I
Yeah.
was using her as a
Yep.
service. It felt like she was excited to help me and connect with me,
Yep.
and she was. And so I feel like there's like this brotherhood and unconditional love that these shining beings are just kind of a part of or reflect, and that you just have to like look at like who is illuminating and warming your way, right? Like because there's people we love who, despite their love for us, try and, like I said, with that kind of critical feedback or the constructive criticism, they're trying to shape and mold you into something that fits in their life. Whereas I feel like bright and shiny
Yes.
people are just like a warm hug, like, "Oh, we bumped into each other and here we're going the same direction. Cool."
Yeah. And you know what else that makes me think of? Because I feel that your intuitive session with her was also not her trying to shape and mold you, but her trying to like say, no, let's peel this back. Let's peel that back. This is you.
Yeah,
And
because
so I feel like
everything
bright and
was, "Does that
shiny.
make sense?" And it was like, "Keep talking.
Yes,
You are tapped in. Like you are tapped
exactly.
in."
So bright and shiny, it's sort of like I know that you're not always 100% fan, but it reminds me sort of more like positive psychology where you're like just illuminating the strengths, the good, the talents
See,
so
but
that
positive
the rest is
psychology,
kind of
it's very intentional to the
mhm.
point like here's what I'm going to do, and it's like steps. Whereas I feel like bright and shiny people, it's a personality trait, it's a character trait, it's just an inner being knowingness,
Oh
right?
yeah, it's certainly not any kind of like step 1, step 2, step 3 or
Yeah.
anything like that. But and it's just a part of them, right? But I guess my point was that they're not ever trying to change you or shape you or
Mm-mm.
mold you. They're just trying to show you who you are.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of, non-judgmental, which that's a feature. That's actually, if you're
Yes.
interested in judgment, judgmentalness, discernment, all that kind of stuff, that's gonna be an upcoming episode in a couple weeks. But it, it's different than like you feel validated in their presence, even if you're not having the therapy session, even if they're not
Yeah.
agreeing with you. Like there's just like an acceptance and a validation there. But I
Yes. And I love it that you even pointed out, even if they're not agreeing with you, you still feel
You
validated
still feel
and or
validated.
listened to.
Or very
Yeah.
heard.
Yes.
But I think
Yes.
like when I think of all those people, whether it's, transactional like the chiropractor, like reaching out for this session, or just even like former colleagues or like you, like being with them feels healing.
Right.
It's not necessarily that it feels um motivating, which it can, but I feel like when
Mhm.
you're healed by
Mhm.
someone, or just you feel or at least not getting further attacked in some way by the world, right? Or these little pricks,
Mhm.
pinpricks, you want to be around them more because it feels good to be healed and to be around someone who feels so healing. Um, they're also, I feel like they're really
Yeah.
patient, honest, genuine, present people.
Mhm. Agreed. I would also say that when you are feeling healed or feel a healing, it does sort of open up new pathways for you, because sometimes that trauma or hurt or whatever it is shuts you down to other things that you, even things that you might normally enjoy.
Well,
So,
and that's where these people, like, even like it can like help heal those traumas and things like that, just being in their presence or being in a safe
mhm.
space. But like, even if they don't avoid the bad, you just don't feel bad talking about it, right? Like, that's what a truly good therapist does, right? Or just like a really good friend.
Yes. Yes. So it feels, well, first of all, I think you might have already said that. It feels safe. So you feel safe, first of all, to be able to talk about things that maybe if you talk, you either wouldn't bring up to somebody else, or if you did bring it up, you'd feel like, oh, I can't believe I'm exposing myself in this
Right, like
way.
when I was talking to her and she brought something up and it kind of like I ended up sharing what I was going through, I was talking about it excitedly and with enthusiasm. And like, oh my god, can you believe? Or like, yeah, that totally did happen when I was 12. Like, it wasn't like, and that, like laying on a psychiatrist's couch and being like, and this was this and that was that, like this was like, and oh my god, and oh, you're so right, and like, oh, does that mean that's why I do this?
Love it.
And so I feel like you you're more yourself when you're around them. I think that's the biggest sign, right? Like, you're just
Yes.
like, you are unabashedly you. Your ugly laugh comes out, your ugly cry, they're laughing, right? Like, it's just like, you're like you said, you're not ashamed or shy to share or talk about certain things. Guilt is off the table, right? Like, you're just there.
Yeah. And you're not trying to, yeah, you are yourself. Sometimes in certain relationships, maybe it's just me, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like a lot of work to show up as what is expected of you, or what story you've put on yourself that's expected of you. But either way, whether you've put it on yourself or you think it is expected of you, obviously they must not be someone that you feel safe with. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to do all this stuff.
I think you just cracked the code though on like why those people that are just bright, shiny people, the majority of their time or when interacting with others is, I have a handful of practitioners I've cultivated in this self-care space.
Mhm.
And they're all living their truth, following their son. There is
Wow.
no expectation. Like, how I'm interacting with them is how they were meant to be in the world. Like, they found it and they've grown and cultivated that and nurtured that. And they are just being them. I think that's what's shining through. Because when I was like thinking of like the people and things like that, like some were colleagues, some were best friends, classmates, just random people I ran into at the store, right? Or these practitioners. But when I went to make my tea before the episode, I was like, little kids perfectly embody like a 2-year old, right?
Oh, right.
Right? Like, they perfectly do.
Yeah.
And it's because like they're untouched by culture and civilization and society and all that. Like, they are just doing their best to sort out what they're receiving, but they're just being them, right? And that's why like being around like a little 1-year-old or a little like 6-month-old laughing for the first time and just giggling and losing their crap at the silliest thing.
Yeah.
And like every adult in the room will stop and just continue to do that thing. Like, and we'll all laugh unabashedly too, right? Like,
Yeah.
how many of us like just go back to the basics of being human when we're around a little 2-year-old? And like a lot of people talk about like, oh, how attractive it is to see a man with a baby and things like that. And I think it's more that right, like they drop that facade of masculinity and they are just being silly and being human, right? Because you see it in women too, but it's more expected of us to have that interaction with children.
Right. I feel like we've talked about this before with kids or something, not this, but something else. But I don't know why I didn't even think about children like bright and shiny. Of course, children show up as themselves.
They're
But
just new to the world.
yeah, something you said before that when you were talking about the practitioners and how they're themselves and following the sun. I can't remember the exact words you said, but when you said those words, it was like I left my body and
yeah, living their truth, following their son.
Living their truth, following their son.
Because Amy, it makes me think of you, and especially like that week you had this year.
Yeah.
And how much more you were doing it. I didn't know how to describe it till just now. There was so much more you-ness to you that week. Because you were living your truth and just following your son.
Yeah. And I feel like I feel as if this podcast has actually helped me peel back layers of things that have just, accumulated over the years. And now I feel like it's almost as if every week it's just like
we're doing therapy.
More me. This is like therapy. We keep telling everyone, get a therapist and start a podcast.
Get a therapist, get a podcast.
Yeah. Or listen to ours.
My plan for this, arc of conversation today was to kind of end with like, now that we've like cracked some of these codes and hidden secrets of bright and shiny people are reflected on the shiny people in our lives, like how to do that to be a beacon of light. But just now talking about like the much more you that you were during that week and how what it's ultimately doing is showing me how to have more compassion for people who are the opposite. And how they must not be following their truth and they must not be following their son, and how heavy and terrible that must feel, right? Like, and to be able to hold compassion for that they aren't shedding the layers, they're putting more on. They're carrying more of a burden. They're carrying a ball and chain, right? Like,
yes, that I'm very happy that you said that, because I think sometimes, not always, but sometimes if we are peeling back our own layers and like, this is me, showing up, and then you see someone else and there can be that level of judgment, like, well, you need to be peeling back layers yourself. And why aren't you doing it? And why are you doing that? And can't you see what you're doing to yourself?
Well, because patience is a depletable resource, right? And so you can have grace for someone, but at a certain point, you're gonna be like, God, fix your own life. And now I'm like, I can have compassion for them now.
Yes, you can. You don't have to have patience. You can just have compassion. In fact, patience or impatience doesn't have to have anything to do with compassion. You can just set that aside, because I think you can have compassion all on its own. And I feel like the people that you have been talking about, the people that I've talked about who are bright and shiny, would naturally have that compassion.
Well, one thing I keep reminding myself lately is self-actualization is a privilege. And so when we hear people talking about manifestation or personal development, personal improvement, things like that, like, there's so many things that get in the way when we look at like the hierarchy of needs that self-actualization is at the top of. And so when people aren't focusing on personal development, but are going in the other direction, to remember that that's not always a choice, right? Like, there are systems in place that get in the way of being your true and authentic self and allowing you to be shiny. And sometimes too, we've talked about it before too, but like, you can be judged as naive when you bring enthusiasm to the table, right? Like, I think there's probably some people who would look at how my chiropractor comes into the room and the energy with that and treat him less professionally, right? Whereas I enjoy it and want that, right? And that's part of why I see him is I think he's incredibly competent at his job and I'm so thankful he can do it with the energy and presence he brings because that is the type of healing I also need in that space.
Yeah. I think oh gosh, it literally left my brain. There was something that you just said about the hierarchy of needs. And so when we're talking about self-development, that is a privilege. When someone doesn't know if they're going to have enough money to pay rent, self-development is off the table.
When you're hungry,
It's off the table, right? Yeah. So I appreciate it that you brought that up, that it is a privilege. And I think that is important to remember.
and
Yeah.
you know, going back to that Dimly episode, we're not always, these people, I have a feeling they go through their dark moments of soul too, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think anybody has to be like this self-charging, unlimited battery supply source of light. I hope this is seen as more just like an appreciation of how these people have touched me
Mhm.
and that I'm just looking for ways to, like I said before, like fill my basket, build my bench, like stack my deck with those kinds of people in my life, while also trying to make sure that I'm that person for those people as well, right?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I, I was gonna ask, when was the last time you consciously knew you were being a beacon of light? Does anything come to mind for you? Because I mean, you always kind of vibe high and you make it a point to. But have you ever had those moments where you feel like you're a beacon of light?
Sometimes I feel that way with strangers when I go out of my way to do something kind for someone I do not know. And it's not like I'm consciously saying, I'm going to be a beacon of light for this person over there who needs help with this random thing. It's just I do it. And then it's their reaction to me. It mirrors it back to me. And then I go,
It mirrors it back to you. Like it's contagious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
Okay, so I've talked a lot on the show about how I occasionally will wake up and have a bright and shiny day where I just wake up and feel like everything's in my favor. And I feel like I'm just naturally a bright and shiny person and I'm reflecting it to people. It's being reflected back to me. And just there's like, even on a hard and busy day, there's just kind of still an ease and excitement and enthusiasm to it. And how I just like yearn for those to come more frequently or try and manufacture them or try and whatever. And I used to think they were random, but my session with Aketra helped me see that it was actually through tapping into the magic of being me, that there were things I was doing around then around meditation or things, that were really filling my cup in a way. That again, back to that self-actualization as a privilege that I've gotten away from while dealing with, I'm in graduate school again. We had a pandemic. I had all those surgeries. Life stressors, like my furnace broke last week. Like there's just like all this random stuff where you get away from the magic of being you, right? Like if you're not intentional with cultivating your own magic and filling your own cup. And so I think it's more achievable than I think. And I think sometimes I avoid that stuff or do it because I feel like I'll be depleted or that people will tap into it and like kind of siphon it. But you have to remember like it all comes from your intent, not theirs. Like your intention, not theirs. And there are ways to protect your energy and protect yourself with that. But yeah, so I don't know. What did she say? I was gonna say this off air to you, but she said something about the energy that comes with me as a person impacts the level of healing I provide for other people. And that now I lost it. But that my healing can come from my voice and my words and hence like the podcast and things like that.
I
And
knew it.
so I'm hoping that when we record these episodes that those my intent of being a beacon of light comes through in these shows, right? And in what we're talking about, or even just like you said, like sometimes we're just kind of therapizing each other, and like even if it's just you that listened that day, like it worked, right? And like we have so many moments, not only where we inspire each other or like peel back a layer, but where we say something and then we realize something about ourselves. Right? Like here we typed it out, we put it in notes, and we like say it like we're reading a script, and then we're like, oh damn, like oh no. I have to sign off and journal now. Like
I know. Hey, we're not playing when we say it's like therapy. We are not playing. It surely is.
And I mean, that's it. So thank you earlier for saying, I'm one of those people to you, because I think that's what started this podcast, and hopefully what's been helping us be a beacon of light to other people each week or when they listen is, we started this because we started doing a weekly Zoom call during midway through the pandemic. And we had never even really talked on the phone before that, because we used to see each other daily, right?
Right, exactly.
And so we're like, why don't we just start recording these conversations? Because they were so like, let's help move ourselves forward. Let's be brighter people kind of conversation. So yeah, I hope, every Friday when we record this and whenever people get a chance to listen, that we're that little lighthouse, I guess.
I think that that's lovely. And I think I love that imagery of being a lighthouse, and just like shining your light. And a lighthouse doesn't discriminate who it shines its light on, right? The light is just there for everyone. And I'm just gonna keep that in my head. I'm gonna pretend like I have a little around my
This
head.
is one of those situations where like step into the light.
Exactly. Be the light. You are the light. Thank you, Tracy. I love it. And I love it that I asked the question and you answered it far better than I was hoping for. And then that this episode, because even though we do the notes, we don't always look at the other person's notes.
No, I make Amy jump in. I'll even black stuff out like I'm the CAA and I'm retracting a document. Like,
no, folks, she does. It's real.
I love her genuine. You have the best reactions, right? Like, because you're unabashedly you in these conversations. You allow yourself to hear things and to learn and grow. Like, I think that's a part
laugh,
of being.
I cry.
Like, that's a part of being shiny, though, is I think these people are just so in touch with their emotions. And so many of us aren't. Like, they're willing to just show, like, my niece comes to mind because she is just 110% whatever emotion she's feeling. And so for me, even being around her in the sad ones, I'm still like, oh, I'm so touched and lucky to get to be a part of it, right? Like, oh, I'll hold this. And then when she's the other direction and just super happy and bright and shiny, I was like, oh, this feels so good to be around. I'm so glad I get to be a part of it, right? Like, it's just, they're just all in and everything.
Yes.
Okay, well, if this episode spoke to you and your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love on your preferred platform with the rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day and share it with other people.